On the 22nd of March, we will celebrate World Water Day. And this year's theme is groundwater, making the invisible visible. And you can help making the invisible visible too. Grab your phone or camera and show how groundwater affects your daily life. Is there enough? Is it safe to use? Who uses the most groundwater in your area? And what needs to be done to exploit and protect groundwater? The 5 most compelling stories will at the end of the year be shown to over 300 policymakers at the UN Water Summit on Groundwater. You can have your voice heard and make a difference. So, how can you join? Shoot the video on landscape orientation. Go into the field and show your groundwater story. Use a mic for good quality audio. Keep your video respectful and keep your video to 60 seconds or less, unlike me. And follow these 3 steps. Upload your video to YouTube or Vimeo, then share it on social media using these hashtags and send the video link to this email address. Good luck, together we can make the invisible visible. On the 22nd of March, we will celebrate World Water Day. And this year's theme is Groundwater, making the invisible visible. And you can help making the invisible visible too. Grab your phone or camera and show how groundwater affects your daily life. Is there enough? Is it safe to use? Who uses the most groundwater in your area? And what needs to be done to exploit and protect groundwater? The 5 most compelling stories will at the end of the year be shown to over 300 policymakers at the UN Water Summit on Groundwater. You can have your voice heard and make a difference. So, how can you join? Shoot the video on landscape orientation. Go into the field and show your groundwater story. Use a mic for good quality audio. Keep your video respectful and keep your video to 60 seconds or less, unlike me. And follow these 3 steps. Upload your video to YouTube or Vimeo, then share it on social media using these hashtags and send the video link to this email address. Good luck, together we can make the invisible visible. World Water Day, and this year's theme is Groundwater, making the invisible visible. And you can help making the invisible visible too. Grab your phone or camera and show how groundwater affects your daily life. Is there enough? Is it safe to use? Who uses the most groundwater in your area? And what needs to be done to exploit and protect groundwater? The 5 most compelling stories will at the end of the year be shown to over 300 policymakers at the UN Water Summit on Groundwater. You can have your voice heard and make a difference. So, how can you join? Shoot the video on landscape orientation. Go into the field and show your groundwater story. For good quality audio, keep your video respectful and keep your video to 60 seconds or less, unlike me. And follow these 3 steps. Upload your video to YouTube or Vimeo, then share it on social media using these hashtags and send the video link to this email address. Good luck, together we can make the invisible visible.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning and good evening. Good morning to our participants in the Philippines and good evening to all our participants in the United States and in maybe in other parts of the world. So I am Dr. Marla Maniquis Redillas, and I'm going to be your host for today on our PAASE Fireside Chats with the theme Groundwater Making the Invisible Visible in celebration of the UN World Water Day 2020. So I'm very excited for today because we've invited speakers from many different sectors, from policy sector, policy and regulatory sector, from LGU, academe, industry as well. And we're going to have our discussion regarding all of the issues surrounding groundwater. So without much further ado, let us begin our fireside chat with our first speaker. So may I call Engineer Teresa Villena Villacorta. So she is the principal engineer at the MWSS corporate office. I'm gonna share the screen. So Dr. Engineer Villacorta is a proud Bicolana raised in the town of Bagamanok province of Catanduanes and graduated from Catanduanes State University with a degree of Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering, studied Master of Science in Construction Management at Philippine Polytechnic University and employed currently as a principal engineer at the Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System corporate office, and part of her function is the monitoring of the groundwater utilization of the 2 concessionaires, which is the Manila Water and Maynilad. Okay, let us call sound Engineer Teresa Villacorta. Engineer Teresa?
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everyone. My discussion is only about the utilization of MWSS deep wells from our 2 concessionaires, that is the Maynilad Water and the Manila Water. The MWSS ground utilization had started way back 2019. The objective of this slide is just to discuss the MWSS deep well utilization as a contingency and interim source while new sources are still in its way, provide the information regarding the utilization of the groundwater in Metro Manila and the main purpose of its use. In the 2004 resolution, NWRB revoked the permit water permit for deep wells water extraction in 8 Metro Manila critical areas, that is the North Caloocan, West Navotas, Quezon City, Makati, Mandaluyong, Pasig, Pateros, Parañaque, Pasay, Las Piñas, and Muntinlupa. This also includes the nearby provinces of Guiguinto, Bulacan, Bukawe, Marilao, Bulacan, Mikawayan, Bulacan, Dasmariñas, Cavite. These critical areas were identified by the consultant of engineering and science and technology study as early as in 1994. In 2019, part of Metro Manila and neighboring towns such as Cainta, Antipolo, Taytay, Angono, and Binangon, Rizal, all within MWSSE's concession area, have experienced prolonged water service interruption that causes an inconvenience to the affected community. And in order to alleviate their plight, MWSS requested the operation and construction of deep wells from MWRB and the issuance of a temporary water permit. Temporary water permit was allowed to MWSS through its concessionaires, Manila Water and Manila, to reopen and utilize the 180 existing wells, provided they will submit the comprehensive report on the result of the drilling conducted, including the georesistivity report, well lag, and the pumping test data. Groundwater policy and implementation. MWRB shall maintain maximum water allocation to MWSS from the Angat Reservoir, that is the surface water, and to ensure the adequate water supply in Metro Manila. Temporarily allow MWSS to use its existing and develop new wells to augment the water supply for its 2 concessionaires, that is Manila Water and Manilad, for the duration of the El Nino and to be used for the affected communities. Temporarily reopen deep wells that were previously closed and sealed, subject to control and monitoring of MWRB for critical services, that is for hospital use. Conduct aggressive information, education, and communication campaign on water conservation and water recycling. Conduct aggressive monitoring and water wastage in Metro Manila. Address the concern immediately. Closely coordinate with MWRB Technical Working Group on the Angat Dam operation as ascertain sufficient water supply in Metro Manila. But during the time where supply is less than the water demand, the 2 concessionaires shall request the temporary water permit from MWRB to use those developed and existing wells that is already operational. Groundwater development utilization of deep well in MWSS East and West concession. The reactivation of deep wells serves as supply augmentation for the central business system to reduce the impact of supply deficit during summer month and the immediate term. Deep wells as contingency supply during calamities, either man-made or natural, and other emergencies, provided the following must be observed. Limit the quantity of water in a basin, which can be withdrawn regularly, permanently, without dangerous depletion of groundwater and producing undesirable effect. Negative effect includes the depletion of groundwater, lowering of water table, saltwater intrusion, land subsidence, water quality degradation, and supply water reduction. Groundwater management protocols must be in place to sustainably operate the groundwater system, which start at the assessment and determination of groundwater availability through various techniques such as water balance. As of now, there is a 171 MLD capacity that is available just in case we need for the emergency purposes, which comprises of 105 deep wells. MWSS will utilize deep wells as interim source of water while new sources are still on its way. When the new source arrive, deep wells will not be used or put on standby, but still be properly maintained. No other extraction of groundwater and will maintain the extraction of 80% of the well production capacity. During minimum demand rainy season, deep well will not be utilized to allow the recharging of the aquifer. That is all for my presentation today. Thank you very much for everyone. Doc Marla.
So thank you very much for your presentation, Engineer Teresa. Let's proceed to our next speaker. Okay, so for our next speaker, we have Dr. Diana Aga. Dr. Aga joined the faculty at SUNY Buffalo in August 2002, and her current research involves investigating the fate, transport, and health implications of contaminants in the environment, such as persistent organic pollutants, pesticides, pharmaceuticals, and endocrine disrupting chemicals, and engineered nanomaterials. She is currently the director of Renew and aspires to establish and deepen ties with national and global partners and interdisciplinary faculty across UB, whose research interests in water, energy, and environment are informed by equity and sustainability concerns. Let us all welcome Dr. Diana Aga.
Thank you, Marla, for your introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Okay,
And
excellent. Yeah, thank you. Also, I wanted to say I'm also from Bicol, so good. From the first speaker was Bicolana. I'm from Naga City. So today I'm just going to share some of the research I'm doing that's relevant for this particular Fireside chat. So I'm doing some work on emerging contaminants, which are contaminants that are consisting of, for example, pharmaceutical residues, antibiotics, personal care products like shampoo, active ingredients, hormones, some flame retardants, and I will talk a little bit about PFAS, or perfluoroalkyl substances, which are actually called forever chemicals because they never degrade. Right? In my group, we develop methods to analyze them in surface water and groundwater. We try to determine how much they occur in the environment, their concentrations, and what are the impacts they have on wildlife and human. So you can see here in the picture, actually, this particular picture was when we went to Laguna Lake. So I have some collaborations in the Philippines. So while my research group is in the US, I actually do some research with people from the Philippines. So this was Laguna Lake. And these chemicals are persistent and they bioaccumulate in the body. And they can actually stay in milk, human breast milk. So you can transfer this, if you're a nursing mother, you can transfer these chemicals to your children if you're breastfeeding. So yeah, this is one of the things that we are working on. The other thing is they bioaccumulate in fish. So some of these chemicals like antidepressants or other drugs can accumulate in brains. So antidepressants are affecting brains. So especially if you like fish, you know, sometimes the Filipinos like to eat fish brains, you can probably take some of these chemicals in your system. So how do these emerging contaminants get into the environment? Many of these pharmaceuticals and other chemicals considered as emerging contaminants are introduced in the water system, in the surface water, and eventually to groundwater, because from our toilet, when you flush it, it goes to the wastewater treatment plants, and they don't really get removed 100%. So they end up being in the surface water. In the US, they are also coming from animals. So maybe also in the Philippines, some of the animals like chickens and pigs, they also consume antibiotics, and sometimes they put it in the feeds. So they are in their manure, and manure are used to fertilize fields. So then you can also introduce them in the environment. And then sometimes when it rains a lot, they go to the groundwater because they're water soluble. So now once they're in groundwater, they stay there for a long time because they don't degrade in the water and under groundwater. The wastewater treatment plants may or may not remove them. In my studies, there are several factors that affect the removal efficiencies in water treatment plants. Sometimes the so-called hydraulic retention time or solid retention time, which is the time where you keep the water in the wastewater treatment plants, affects how much they are degraded. There are also certain wastewater treatment plant that has the so-called activated or nitrifying activated sludge. And this actually help degrade some of these emerging contaminants. So the vulnerability of surface waters will depend on the chemicals itself and depend on the type of wastewater treatment. Like the redox condition, like how much oxygen there is, also affect the removal. So one of the things that we are also looking at is the distribution of antibiotics in the environment from wastewater treatment plants all over the world. We actually send our students to these countries, and you can see here, Philippines is one of our sampling sites. And what we're looking at is we measure the antimicrobials, so the antibiotics and many other chemicals, the resistance genes and resistant bacteria, metals, pesticides, and so on. We measure what goes in and what goes out and what are in the receiving water, which is sometimes used for drinking water supplies. We're interested in antibiotics because of the emergence of antibiotic resistance. That is one of the biggest problems that we are facing now. When we collect samples, so when we go to these places and we collect 500 ml samples, we go through a process called solid phase extraction, as you can see here. And then, so this is a process that's we perform in the lab, and then we ship it to the University at Buffalo where we are, and we analyze it here using what we call LCMSMS, which stands for liquid chromatography mass spectrometry. So it's a long process, but mainly we actually involve some of the Philippine students. So this is a sampling in Manila. You can see familiar place. These are some of the receiving waters where effluents from wastewater treatment plants are discharged. So sometimes we actually sample from the mall. So this is, I think this is from SM, where they have the wastewater treatment plants. So, and then we bring the water samples in the lab in Manila, University of the Philippines. And we have our students train some of the local students. And then we ship the samples here. We have the same thing that we do in India. So you can see some places in Hong Kong. We also collect wastewater from wastewater treatment plant in Switzerland and Bangladesh. So this is a global problem, not just Philippines. So some of the chemicals that we measure are antibiotics. So some of them may be familiar to you, like tetracyclines, sulfonamides, ciprofloxacin, azithromycin, you can probably erythromycin. So some of this may be familiar to you. We also look at active ingredients of antidepressants because in many developed countries, many people are taking antidepressants as part of their lives. And some of these chemicals are very stable in the environment. And then some other personal care products like caffeine, carbamazepine, trimethoprim, and so on, acetaminophen. So these are some over-the-counter drugs. We measure all these chemicals and we compare them. As you can see, I'm just going to show you some data. The influent, that's the untreated sewage, right? So we measure what comes into the wastewater treatment plant. So this is one from Sweden. You can see there are high levels, 500 parts per billion, but you can see that even after treatment, so this is the effluent, this is what is discharged, you can still see some macrolides that are not treated. Upstream means it's before the wastewater treatment plant. This is in the stream, and downstream, this means this is where it is being discharged. So you can see there are concentration of this waste of these chemicals in the downstream. In Switzerland, they have very good treatment system. You can see the influent has high levels of pharmaceuticals, but then in the effluent, there's pretty much nothing, right? And here's India. One thing you can see in India, for example, this influent has high levels, and you can see this is 50,000. Just to show you, in Sweden, this 500. In Switzerland, the highest was 4,000 and some 2,000. But now you go to India, there's like 50,000 parts per billion. So that's really high. And then you can see the effluent, there's not removed completely. Okay. And so with Hong Kong actually has a very high amount. So almost 65,000. And then you can see there's still chemicals in the effluent, meaning they are not removed completely. Of course, you might be most interested what we see in Manila. You can see here the influent about 1,000 and the effluent is almost the same, right? So they don't get removed. The other treatment plants, so these are 2 wastewater treatment plants. We see some of the influent and maybe there's 50% removal. What is interesting here is this is upstream. So this is before the discharge location. You can actually see tetracyclines in the upstream, meaning there are some untreated sewage coming into the surface water. And we're not surprised. We have seen a lot of this untreated sewage coming into the surface water in the Philippines. Okay, now compared to the US, you can see upstream, you don't see anything actually in the downstream, which means the receiving water pretty much are clean and it is diluted. Okay, so what's interesting, this is a graph of the chemicals of antidepressants. So in the Philippines, we did not detect antidepressants, which means Filipinos probably don't take a lot of antidepressants compared to developed countries like Sweden, Switzerland, and US, where they use a lot of antidepressants. So the bigger the circle, that means the higher the concentration. And this frequency means how often you see it. So luckily here in the Philippines, you don't see as much of that. Okay. Now, what we find out is, you might ask, so how can we remove this from the surface water, which ends up in the groundwater, which end up in our drinking water, right? So a lot of these chemicals, if you don't remove them, may end up in our tap water. And it's very important to remove them because some of them may affect some of us who are allergic to these chemicals, or they also accumulate in our body. We have found that activated carbon and ozonation are the most effective in removing these chemicals. Biological treatment process, which is the typical process that we find in many municipalities, can only remove about 50% or less. Okay, but if you put activated carbon and ozonation, unfortunately, these are expensive processes. They remove most of them. Okay, so I'll stop here because I have more, but I think I will run out of time. So I'll just stop here and give it to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for very excellent and comprehensive studies. So maybe we can talk more about that later. Let's proceed to thank you, Diana. Let's call our next speaker. Okay, so here we have engineer and environmental planner Sherwin Valeroso. So Engineer Sherwin currently works as the supervising environment management specialist of General Trias City Environment and Natural Resources Office, or CENRO, and Manila Bay and Pollution Control Programs Officer and focal person of the city government of General Trias. He has a vast experience with regards to the supervisory and managerial level in the Cavite provincial government, CENRO, and also the head of the Planning, Research, and Development Division. And also, he had a lot of experience as pollution control officer, occupational health and safety practitioner. So let's hear about the LGU initiatives concerning groundwater management or groundwater pollution control. Please, you may have, the screen is yours now, Engineer Sherwin.
Thank you, Doc Mars. Good morning to everyone. I'll be talking about Cavite groundwater issues and challenges and current initiatives and best practices in our city of General Trias, which is a component city of the province of Cavite. So first, we look at the water resources in Cavite. As we all know, we have the dams and groundwater initially available, but surface water is already starting from the Maragondon River system. Then, if there are numerous dams in Cavite, why resort to the groundwater? So the problem with our dams is we have this. Number one, we have no major dam in the province. Number two, the 200-year-old dams, non-operational for the last 100 years. as per our provincial governor, John Vic Remulla. Then we have the Cavite Integrated Water Resource Management Master Plan. So you can easily browse it through the web. First issue based on that plan is the Cavite's groundwater supply. The present water supply and distribution systems covering the province of Cavite is no longer able to meet the present and future aggregate demand for water. So as we can see for the population trend of Cavite, the total population of Cavite as of August 1, 2015 is, we have this data, 3,678,301. But the latest census states that around more than 4 million people are already in the whole province of Cavite. Then the second issue would be the Cavite's groundwater supply. The water obstruction in a number of areas in the province has already reached critical points, causing decreased groundwater levels and resulting in groundwater mining, as well as saltwater intrusion in coastal areas. So we have 9 coastal municipalities and cities located in the province of Cavite, which is just the side of Manila Bay. Then the third issue identified in that plan is there is lack of any septage collection and treatment system, as well as any pipe wastewater collection and treatment system or a centralized sewerage system. Due to this lack, septic tank effluent is generally allowed to leach into the ground, while untreated wastewater from households and industrial establishments is returned to the water sources. Then we have also the contamination of groundwater. The issue of solid waste in the country creates problems that results to the contamination of our groundwater sources, creating obnoxious odors and aesthetic deterioration. Then with that, I'll be sharing with you some of the current initiatives and best practices in the City of General Trias. We'll be focusing on 2 aspects, the solid waste management and the liquid waste management. Then in the future, we'll be focusing on the source or the supply of water. Then we have this, under the solid waste management category, we have the information, education, and communication campaign on waste management. So we are adhering on no segregation, no collection policy implementation, 100% hopefully in the City of General Trias this year, 2022. Then even though we are in the pandemic era, we were able to conduct information, education, communication campaign through Zoom, through MS Teams, even face-to-face, limited face-to-face or physical training or information, education, communication campaign. Then we have the different IEC materials on solid waste management and liquid waste management. Then we have the operationalization of our centralized materials recovery facility, composed of a composting facility, segregation area, and a collection of residual plastics. Then as you can see, we have the rotary composter that can generate a soil conditioner for around 24 to 48 hours. 500 kilograms per day. Then we also utilize the biogas system, utilizing anaerobic digestion. Here is our pilot biogas system in the City of General Trias. But we are looking on a bigger volume, which is a constructed one, which is a better system than this IBC tank. Then we are conducting our annual barangay validation and assessment, focusing on solid waste management and Manila Bay cleanup rehabilitation program implementation in all 33 barangays. So all of our barangays have their own barangay ecological solid waste management committee to oversee the implementation of barangay solid waste management programs. Then they also crafted their own barangay ecological solid waste management program or plan. That is a 5-year plan. Then under liquid waste management, we are focusing on the inspection of commercial establishment, private homes and factories, and private institutions along riverbanks and shoreline of Manila Bay watershed that has wastewater treatment facilities or adequate septic tank prescribed by existing laws, ordinances, rules, and regulations. So we require those non-complying establishments and homes to set up facilities or septic tanks within reasonable time. So the roles and responsibilities of the City of General Trias and our DILG, the conduct inspection and monitoring of compliance of CEs, IFs, and PH, and issuance of notice of violation to non-compliant are the responsibilities of the LGU, City of General Trias. Then the DILG are doing some monitoring actions, validate LGU KPI data submitted. Then we are issuing a notice of violation and non-compliance to commercial establishments, industrial factories, private homes, and private institutions. With this, here is a sample. We are checking for the liquid waste management, the wastewater treatment facility, the septage management, the solid waste management, hazardous waste management, and we do the rounds on facility inspection. So we focus on the septage management by checking if they have their own service provider, accredited service provider that have the licenses and permits coming from the Department of Health and the DENR. Then we are conducting 3 times a week on-the-spot inspection of commercial establishments, industrial factories, and private homes and private institutions. So we are doing this under the Inspection, Inventory, and Monitoring team, led by yours truly as the Manila Bay and Pollution Control Programs Officer and Government Facilities Pollution Control Officer of the City of General Trias. Then later on, we will be having the septage management facility in the City of General Trias to be operated by Cavite Allied Consult Services Corporation and Allied Consult Eco Solutions Corporation, located at Golden Gate Business Park, Barangay Buena Vista 2, City of General Trias, which is scheduled to be piloting their operations by mid of April 2022. Then we also have this siphoning of our septage in our city jail. Then we also have our own wastewater treatment facility for our centralized public market located in Barangay Sampalucan, City of General Trias. So we just started the operation last year. Then we will be having another one, wastewater treatment facility, this coming second quarter of 2022, which is housing the whole City of General Trias hospital complex. I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Yes, that's excellent. Thank you very much, Engineer Sherwin. Very excellent initiatives and activities you do in your local region in Cavite, in General Trias City.
Thank you,
Okay,
Doc
so let's
Mars.
continue with our next speaker. All right. So our next speaker is Engineer Bay Emboltorio. She is currently the head of Strategic Asset Planning Department of the Manila Water Company and leads the development of the Water and Wastewater Master Plan of the company's Manila East Zone concession. She has been with Manila Water for almost 20 years and has worked across the different units of the company. Bay is a professional civil engineer and has earned her bachelor's degree, a science degree in civil engineering from UP Dalaman. So let's all welcome Engineer Bay.
Hi, Marla. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Let me share my screen. Can you all see my screen? And can you hear me clearly?
Yes, all is good.
Okay, good morning, everyone. First of all, we'd like to thank the organizer, especially Marlan, for giving us the opportunity in Manila Water to share our experience with regards to our groundwater utilization and management plan. So just a quick background, I think Engineer Villacorta already discussed earlier that in 1997, there was a public-private partnership that was formalized, and the MWSS service area was split into two concessions, with the East Zone of Metro Manila and its neighboring municipalities in Rizal being awarded to Manila Water. So the East Zone is consisting of the 24 cities and municipalities in Metro Manila and Rizal. This includes the business centers in Makati, Taguig, and Quezon City, and the growing area of the Rizal area. And this also includes the northern Rizal municipalities along the Laguna Lake shoreline. So Manila Water provides an entire water value chain for water supply. So we manage the water sources that MWSS provided to us, and then we develop and manage the treatment, the distribution, including the engagement and the management of the customer service. And we also do collect and treat the wastewater, the domestic wastewater of the area. So just a brief background, the 1997 concession. During that time, only 3.1 million people in Metro Manila has a connection to water services. And of these 3.1 million customers, only 26% has 24 hours water availability. And during that time, water losses was also as high as 63%. So fast forward 2019, we now cover 6.8 million customers in the East Zone, and 99% of this customer experience 24 hours water availability at a minimum pressure of 7 PSI, or at least at the ground level of their houses. And we were able to do this by reducing our NRW down to 10%. So we were able to save at least 700 million liters per day of water. Hence, those savings were the supply that we were able to provide to the customers of Manila Water. So let me now share the demand for in the East Zone. So in this chart, you will see the light blue area. This is the annual average demand of the East Zone from 1997 to a projection up to 2047. Demand means it's the consumption of the customers plus the losses from the treatment up to the distribution. And then the dotted red line here is the supply from the Angat Dam. This is the main source of supply of the concessions of MWSS. So for the E-Zone concession, our allocation is 1600 mLD from the Angat Dam. And then the dark blue area here is actually the demand of the customers during summer months. So it actually increases 8 to 10% higher than the annual average demand. So ideally, the supply should always be higher than the demand projection, so that our customers will always have the 24 hours water supply even during summer and even during droughts. So pre-1997, as I've mentioned earlier, with the 26% of the customers with water availability, their consumption is around 400, more than 400 mLD. But because of the high NRW, the summer demand increases up to around 1119 mLD. But as in 2019 up to present, that increases to a consumption of 1360 to 1370 mLD. But because of, as I mentioned, as we were able to reduce the NRW, the summer months demand is between 1750 to 1800. So how is it possible that we're able to provide supply if supply from the main source of the East Zone, which is the Angat Dam, is only at 1600 NLB? So this black line is the available supply from the existing and future water sources of the East Zone. So in the earlier years, from 1997 up to 2018, we were only able to get the supply from the Angat, the savings from the NRW losses that we were able to um, to explore and utilize. And then during that time, we only have 17 MLD of groundwater sources as an augmentation to the supply coming from Angat. However, in 2004, as mentioned by Engineer Vulacan earlier, NWRB issued a moratorium of stopping the operation of deep wells in Metro Manila. So we really had to find ways to minimize, if not eliminate, the use of the groundwater sources so that it could provide a breather to recharge the groundwater of Metro Manila. So 1997 to 2017, it was possible because there was this NRW that we can source out. So we were able to support the initiative of the government to not use the deep wells and give it a time to recharge. However, when we foresee the demand during that time that it will continuously increase and what we have extracted from the NRW is no longer sustainable as well as the supply from Angat, we started to conduct studies if we can already use the deep wells or the groundwater source in Metro Manila, at least during times of emergencies or drought. So we engage subject matter experts and consultants to do groundwater studies within Metro Manila and Rizal. And with that result, it showed that we can at least utilize the groundwater source as a contingency measure during times when the supply from the surface water or from Angat is not sufficient, and during times of emergencies. So at least during summer and if there are natural calamities that would happen. So with the support of MWSS and NWRB, we rehabilitated and developed our deep wells and added more. So right now we have 84 MLD of 84 deep wells that can provide us about 100 MLD of water source to augment the supply from Angat. So in the interim, while the new water sources are not yet available, those water sources and large infrastructures that MWS are currently developing, we're aside from the Laguna Lake, we have a treatment plant at Laguna Lake at around 100 MLD. We use the deep wells during summer months and during times when the Angat water source cannot provide us our full utilization. However, when we conducted the studies for the deep wells, the water quality is still not that good to just provide conventional treatment. So along with the deep wells with water quality that would need advanced treatment, we put in package treatment plants in those areas so that we can provide potable water from those deep wells. So in the interim, at least in the next 3 to 5 years, the deep wells or the groundwater sources would really be the augmentation for the supply of the East Zone during summer months. Because as mentioned by Engineer Vulacan earlier, during non-peak season or if it's not summer, we don't operate our deep wells so that it could provide a breather to those deep wells to recharge their groundwater level. And in the long term, once the medium and long-term surface water sources are already available, we will still maintain our deep wells as our backup sources, and it will serve as our monitoring points for the groundwater level status and the water quality of the groundwater in Metro Manila and Rizal. And we intend to share that with the government agencies that also manage the groundwater sources, such as the National Water Resource Board and MWSS. And we really need to manage these deep wells because the Philippines is very prone to these natural calamities. In terms of the climate change, we have drought, and we also have typhoons, and of course the earthquake or the big one, which can provide harmful impact to our surface water sources, specifically Angat and those future water sources. Just that even if something happens with our water sources, the surface water sources, we still have our deep wells to provide augmentation of supply and still provide 24 hours water services to our customers. So our deep wells currently are located, we call this the 4 quadrants in the East Zone. This is actually based on the Big One Master Plan of the government, wherein we assume that based on the fault lines in the Metro Manila, we isolated some 4 quadrants of Metro Manila and Rizal, such that even if bridges would fall, or the sources that, or the transmission lines that would supply those areas from our sources would break, we still have our deep wells to augment those areas during times of natural calamities and emergencies. So just to summarize, for us, the groundwater is still an important supply of domestic water supply in the East Zone, and it has been a very key source in maintaining the 24-hour water supply in Metro Manila in the interim, while the long-term and the medium-term surface water sources are not yet in place. However, it should be anchored on sound feasibility study and test to make sure that we don't over-extract the groundwater source in the area. So we conduct pumping tests and other tests to always monitor the status of our groundwater source. And very key is our coordination with the national agencies and local government units in the East Zone, so that we are always coordinated in the way we manage and utilize our groundwater source. And we will still continue to use our groundwater sources even if there are already surface water. In the long term, this will serve as our contingency sources during emergency, especially in times of natural calamities. So let me end my presentation here, and hopefully we've shared a lot that would you can also apply in your own area. Thank you very much.
Yes, that was excellent, Engineer Bay. Actually, tons of enormous information. So later on, maybe there will be questions to you. Okay, thank you so much for that. So now let's call our last speaker. Okay, here. So we have Mr. Yang Villa. Yang is a water innovation evangelist who has done tremendous work in mainstreaming complex water issues. So prior to becoming head of the Philippines for the global water innovation consultancy, ISLE Utilities, Yang led water infrastructure and innovation projects across Southeast Asia. His recent projects include ADB COVID-19 and Water Guidance Note and World Bank Utility of the Future program. Yang is a compelling youth voice through his prolific work with the International Water Association, Academy for Political Management, and Center for Youth Advocacy and Networking. He co-founded the Philippine Young Water Professionals, for which he was recognized as an under 30 environmental champion in 2018. So yeah, we can hear a lot more about Yang in his topic on his talk regarding PPP, public-private partnerships. So the screen is yours, Yang.
Thank you very much, Doc Marla, and good morning to all. I hope that you can now see my screen.
Clear and
wonderful
audio.
Great. I'm going to talk to you about the socio-economic and community perspectives, in particular, the importance of stakeholder engagement and the rise of public-private partnerships in the water sector. And you've seen one example from the previous speaker about Metro Manila. Let's start by acknowledging that in order to meet the rising demand of water in many of our growing cities, groundwater should be part of a diverse basket of water supply options in order to hedge against climate change and other risks to water resources. Now, these alternatives to groundwater can be tapped and are accessible by using the appropriate treatment and conveyance technology. Aside from groundwater, we can also tap surface water, which offers a larger volume of water but may require more complex treatment and conveyance than groundwater. Rainwater is useful for small-scale and on-site applications, such as for household supply. Saline water offers the largest quantity, but it is expensive to treat because it requires energy-intensive treatment processes. And we've also got reused water, also known as recycled water, which involves treating wastewater to very high quality. Singapore's New Water program is an example of reused water that is fit for human consumption, but in most cases, recycled water is only used for non-domestic applications, such as industrial use. So the point of this first slide is that there are many technical factors to be considered when deciding what should be part of a city or region's water basket. But what I would like to focus on are the community factors, which are equally important in defining the water basket. And let me share some of the social and economic factors at play. The first is what we call the economic concept of willingness to pay. If a water source is too expensive to develop, then consumers are not likely to want to pay for it. But willingness to pay is a dynamic factor. It can change over time. When we anticipate that our groundwater resources will dry up in a few years, consumers' willingness to pay for an alternative source is likely to go up as well. This has happened in cities like Sydney or Cape Town, where prolonged drought increased people's willingness to pay for desalination plants or recycled water. Another social factor is ancestral domain. Many water resources, especially surface water sources, say in upland areas, are within the recognized property and custody of indigenous peoples. Philippine laws require the FPIC, or the free, prior, and informed consent of indigenous people before that water source can be developed. A third factor is environmental footprint. Some water sources are more ecological than others in terms of energy use, carbon footprint, and land use requirement. Note that no water source is perfectly green or has zero adverse environmental impact, but it is up to the community to determine what is an acceptable level of impact. And that's why conducting environmental impact assessment and life cycle assessments are very important when studying water source options. Finally, there's also social acceptance. Many water source options are off limits because the public do not feel comfortable or safe using them. For example, many Metro Manila residents would probably not want to drink water sourced from Pasig River, even if we are able to pass all of the drinking water standards. And that's because there's already a negative perception attached to Pasig River. This is also called the yuck factor, and is the reason why reused or recycled water is often the last resort when planning the water basket. So if socioeconomic factors are crucial to determining the water basket, then communities must be involved in water planning and programming. And we do that through multi-stakeholder engagement platforms. The photo that you see here is an example of multi-stakeholder engagement that is usually called an open town hall or a public hearing. Other stakeholder engagement platforms include public consultations, negotiations, and civil society meetings. Stakeholder engagement also requires some preparatory work, such as conducting surveys and interviews or economic modeling. Now, it's not enough to simply conduct a meeting with stakeholders. Unfortunately, some public hearings are done just to comply with regulatory requirements. An effective multi-stakeholder engagement platform must respect the wishes of the community and find ways to compromise to move the project forward. An effective platform also means that the attendees are representative of multiple interests within the community. that there is no coercion or intimidation involved, and that there is a clear feedback and consensus mechanism. Community engagement should empower communities, and there is a whole social and economic science behind designing effective multi-stakeholder engagement platforms. To wrap up this section, the last thing I'd like to talk about are public-private partnerships, or PPPs. Because PPPs embody many of the community engagement principles that I just discussed. What are PPPs? So PPPs are long-term contracts between the government and a private entity, typically a private investor, aimed at a joint business activity. In this case, our concern is regarding water source development, PPPs, to find alternatives to groundwater. PPP projects are government contracts. Thus, they must be scrutinized by the public through multi-stakeholder engagement. I've seen a number of PPP projects in the water sector that unfortunately have not adequately engaged the community, and now the public is suffering through poor service, high water rates, and weak regulation. But let me give you an example of a successful community engagement program in the PPP process, and that is the Bulacan Bulk Water Supply Project. This is a schematic of the Bulacan Bulk Supply Project. And the objective of Bulacan Bulk is to ensure sustainable future supply for the province of Bulacan by providing a supplement and perhaps an alternative to groundwater sources, thus expanding the water basket of the entire province of Bulacan. The 21 cities and municipalities of Bulacan were represented by their LGUs, as well as their respective water districts and water operators, to ensure that the bulk water tariff is acceptable to consumers. In addition, the 2 Metro Manila concessionaires were also involved because Bulacan Bulk sources from the same Angat Ipo Dam system, as you can see in the schematic, that supplies Maynilad and Manila water. And finally, the indigenous Dumagats were also offered employment and other assistance as part of the deal to develop the Angat watershed. The key lesson and the key message here is this. When designing a public-private partnership project, such as for water source development, especially large-scale water resource development, it's important to study not just the technical and engineering aspects of the project, but also the socio-economic and community aspects, such as willingness to pay and social acceptability. In conclusion, I'd like to stress that aside from technical factors, socioeconomic factors are also critical in making decisions about the water basket. And as such, communities must be engaged and empowered to share in that decision-making process. Thank you, and back to you, Marla.
Okay, that was excellent, Yang. And we've learned about that community also plays an important role actually in this process. Okay, so I would like to thank first of all our speakers for very wonderful, excellent presentations. Thank you for preparing for our audience today. So now let's move on to our second part, which is the discussion, our main part. So we have invited our reactors. So I would like to introduce our reactors for today. First, we have Dr. Hermogenes Paglia. So he is currently a professor and vice president for research, extension and training services at Bataan Peninsula State University. Please say hi, Dr. Paglia, and our volunteers will spotlight you. Yeah, there you can see. And then next we have Engineer Susan Abano. So Engineer Susan naman is the chief in the Policy and Program Division of the National Water Resources Board. And so she can tell us more about policies regarding groundwater. And next we have Engineer Donnie Ray Camus. He is currently the Deputy Director of the UPMO Office of the Vice Chancellor for Planning and Development at UPLB from the academe naman na side. Okay, next we have Dr. Cherry Mateo. She is a research scientist and the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, Land and Water Australia, from the research area. So we have our 4 reactors for today. So we're gonna give some time for our reactor to comment and to provide their general comments first, and then later on we're going to have the Q&A. So please kindly prepare or type your questions in the chat. So our reporter here, Hill, will assist us in addressing your questions to our discussants. Okay, so now, yeah. So let's give the screen now to our 4 reactors. Okay, so maybe we can request our reactors to please turn on their camera. Okay, Sir Dr. Pagia, Engineer Abanyo, Sir Camus, and also Dr. Cherry. Okay, there. Okay, so yeah, so please say hi first. Okay, let us call Dr. Pagia first for your comments.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Gala. First of all, I would like to congratulate and commend our able speakers for today for sharing their initiatives and programs of their respective agencies and institutions as far as water management is concerned. So generally, groundwater provides almost half of all drinking water worldwide, about 40% of water for irrigated agriculture, and 1/3 of water supply required for industry. It sustains ecosystems, maintains the base flow of rivers, and prevents land subsidence and seawater intrusion. Despite of its importance, groundwater is invisible, and out of sight sometimes also means out of mind. So I would like to start first with the first speaker, Engineer Maria Teresa Villacorta. She talks on deep well utilization in NWSS East and Water Concession Discussion. So she made mention about the education campaign, awareness campaign regarding recycling and water management. So my concern is that we would like to know from her later, perhaps, the effect of this or the contribution of this initiative on education campaign as to reduction of water losses and even efficiency of water consumption overall in Metro Manila or among households. So initiatives of MWSS has been presented and taken up by the agency. So another one is the interesting topic of Dr. Diana Aga, wherein we have been educated on how the antibiotics affects with antibiotics residues affects to water and eventually on groundwater. And we have learned from her that despite of the water treatments being conducted, so that would not guarantee that water could be 100% effective and free from contaminants like antibiotic contaminants. And that's very critical since the food we eat, especially fish, could be contaminated could be a carrier of this antibiotic residues which has an ill effect to human being, especially on the health of a human being. So this is quite alarming. So perhaps a long-term probably solutions or policy could be done to have really a very safe environment. But anyway, her initiative, especially her agency, is quite relevant because taking all the initial steps and procedures in gathering all informations and data as to the effects of antibiotic residues to groundwater have been extensively performed and taken by Dr. Aga. For local groundwater issues and challenges and current initiatives and best practices by Engineer Sherwin Valeroso in Cavite. So he made mention that obviously there is a decreasing supply of groundwater in Cavite. So since there are there are no available dams, that would supply water for domestic consumption in Cavite. So they definitely rely or depend on groundwater or deep well. So he made mention about the contamination, and he presented different policies, initiatives, and programs on how to further reduce contaminations in groundwater. But we are looking at the sustainable measures as to how they are going to have or supply the increasing demand of water in Cavite, and how to perhaps improve the productivity of the existing water resources, and how to respond to climate change must be considered as well. And for Manila Waters, short and long-term initiative for groundwater, now this is a very comprehensive presentation wherein we have learned the initiatives of Manila Water, and even the total customers of the Manila Water. It's about 6.8 customers. The customers that are enjoying the 24-hour water supply, because of that program of Manila Water. Before, that's not that efficient, the supply of water in this concessionaire. So she has presented a master plan to mitigate climate change as well. And groundwater remains to be an alternative source for domestic requirements. And perhaps we need to be educated as well, or inform as well, on how to ensure that deep well utilization as alternative source of water during the months wherein the critical months of the year, like during dry season, have been efficiently monitored, and not being overused. And another one is that public-private partners. This is a very important. This is a very interesting topic presented by Mr. Yang Villa, the head of the Philippines Utilities Asia Pacific, wherein we have learned the different sources of water: the surface water, groundwater, rainwater reuse, and saline water. And in fact, among the sources, mostly groundwater is mostly being explored or exploited. So we have not actually utilized the surface water and water for domestic consumption. But then this can also be utilized as well effectively for agricultural consumption and purposes. And we have learned the importance of community engagement, the willingness to pay of the community, the ancestral domain, the eco-print, social acceptance, and the multi-sectoral engagement. And he presented one of the good initiatives, so example of private partnerships, which is Bulacan bulk water supply. So in short, governments can alleviate the negative effects of agricultural and domestic groundwater use, and sustain the capacity of aquifers for the future. To this effect, they should invest on groundwater information through research and development, which remain incomplete and insufficient in many countries, to properly manage groundwater. To ensure that existing groundwater policies are enforced, that they favor reducing water demand, that they account for connections with surface water systems, and that other policies, such as energy subsidies, do not create counteracting incentives in regions with intensive groundwater use, employ a combination of regulatory, economic, and collective action policy approaches customized to local circumstances. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Pagia. You almost summarized all of the from the presentations. But I believe our other actors could tell us more about their thoughts on these issues. So let's call now Engineer Susan Nabanyo. Maybe you could add more to what Dr. Pagia already mentioned.
So good morning, and thank you to all the speakers. They have presented very nice topics on water and water resources. So first, this is my reaction to Manila Water, Maynilad, and even to Cavite. So as part of the mitigating measures on the possible shortages of water supply from Angat Dam due to the lowering of the water level because of the relatively low water elevation at the beginning of the year. So at 202.2, it's very low compared to the other years. And then we also have less rainfall, even with the pronouncement of PAASE that there will be La Nina for this year, and the high water demand because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I think we allowed the use of the groundwater wells for Maynilad and Manila Water, but as an alternative water source. Okay, but let me remind you that this should not be when the water level of Angat Dam comes to the normal level, we should stop using, because we need to recover, the aquifer should recover. We had the study in 2004, that's right. And in that study, we found out that the water level and the water quality of Metro Manila deteriorates. So we stopped giving water permit. So 2016, 2004 to 2021, that's 16 years ago. And we measured some of the wells and they really recovered. Okay, but the thing is, if we stop the moratorium, so everybody will start pumping, and so the water level will again start deteriorating. But we allowed for MWSS because of this situation, current situation. Okay, so while waiting for the infrastructure, as mentioned, for the water supply in the future, as part of the water security for MWSS. Okay, may we suggest that we implement activities in the short term, like harnessing flood water. Okay, harnessing flood water. We have so much flood water, it just goes to the sea. Okay, and then probably installation of rainwater harvesting that we could use for secondary use. Remember, people in Metro Manila use treated water, clean water, for flushing the toilet, for washing the car, for watering the plants. So it's the same quality. So we spend so much. We spend so much for treating the water, and we just flush the toilet. So there should be ways to harness, to install some rainwater harvesting that we could use for secondary use. And then we start implementing the water demand management. That's a new to the Philippines, but for Singapore, they've been using that one, and with no resources at all, or very limited resources, they were able to sustain the available water for the whole Singapore. Imagine, Philippines has so much water in terms of rainfall. So we need to start thinking about water demand management. Okay, and also with the presentation of Dr. Aga, that's very alarming, and probably we could, as a policy making body also for groundwater, we could incorporate the study in terms of groundwater, because we do also water quality and water quantity should go hand in hand in making policies, whether there will be available water, because if you have so much water but the quality is not good, it's not good for as a source of drinking water. And if you have poor quality, even if there's so much water, so we need those data probably, so we could incorporate that in providing policies in a certain critical area. So we need to know the water quantity and also the water quality. So this could be included. I remember we have not really a project, the UP Diliman have a project on groundwater health index. the biodata of groundwater. So probably we will be getting this data probably together with the data of Dr. Aga, and probably include that in our future policies. And for the public partnership, this could be a good venue, okay, for our water service providers, because we also regulate water service providers, and we found out that they lack funding. So probably this is a venue for the water service providers to obtain funding for probably water sources, to develop water sources, and probably improve their water distribution system. So I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a lot, actually, Engineer Susan Abano, and I agree on all of that you've mentioned regarding the policy for the LG initiatives as well as for the PPPs. Okay, so now I think we can hear from Engineer Camus. Okay, from the maybe academe side. So how about in UPLB, or your thoughts on the topics?
So good morning, everyone. So I would like to express my agreement to the previous speakers. So, but in the Philippines, the NWRB has been issuing water extraction permits, right? But based on their data, the number one extractor of groundwater is for power use. The next is for irrigation, then municipal, then industrial, and then other uses. So what I am seeing here is that we should focus on the more important factor to improve yung extraction methodologies, and at the same time yung use of groundwater in the Philippines. We've been using groundwater carelessly, specifically in rural areas. We've been experiencing a shortage of potable water even in rural areas, simply because of the main problem that most of the groundwater sources are polluted, or sometimes they are of lower quality. The society gives a very minimal importance or value to groundwater because they see it everywhere. They see water everywhere. The Philippines is an archipelago that is surrounded by water, but they are not really educated on how we use water and how we sustainably use water. So what I've been seeing is that the problem in the Philippines, or the depletion of the available usable groundwater, comes from the excessive abstraction of groundwater, and then it goes also with water pollution. Also, we have there is a voluminous wastewater generated all over, and then there is a very inefficient, or you can say we lack wastewater treatment in the Philippines. That's one thing that we should really focus on. Wastewater treatment, or water treatment, should be given now a priority, so that we can reuse water. We can reuse wastewater for domestic or other uses, and reduce abstraction of the groundwater, of the available groundwater. And with Dr. Yang, with Mr. Yang's talk, the PPP, I think it's one thing. It's high time that we resort to this kind of partnerships. Let's accept the fact that the government does not have enough money to fund water infrastructure. So as of the moment, we should focus on developing water infrastructure and manage water the way we should manage it years ago. So I think that's all for now.
Yes, exactly. Donnie, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the problem. The implementation, or how we utilize our groundwater sources is number one, and then the others come come next. Okay, next. Thank you so much for that. Wonderful. And then now let's call Cherry. So Cherry, Dr. Cherry Mateo, you can give your comments first, and then after all of the reactors have provided their comments, later we're gonna have our Q&A. So we're gonna call our speakers to join us. Yeah, here. So first of all, we wanted to hear your thoughts and your comments regarding the topics earlier discussed.
All right. Thanks, Marla, and thanks everyone to all the speakers. So I actually could not give a better summary than what Dr. Hermogenes already did. So he already gave a very good summary of what the speakers talked about. So I'm just going to probably give some comments coming from an Australian perspective. So I don't have lots of experience in the Philippines, but my mom used to work for Manila Water. She's retired now, and I have lots of friends who are still working under Manila Water. But aside from those, like those that I've learned from the university and from my mom and my friends, I don't have much like information about what's going on in the Philippines because most of my work are abroad. So like because when I did my research, it was in Japan, and now I'm in Australia. But from an Australian perspective, looking at the water resources that we have, Australia has about just 419 millimeters mean annual rainfall, whereas in the Philippines, we have roughly 2,348 millimeters. So that's like, in terms of magnitude, that's 5 times more. So we say that Australia is really a very dry continent. Of course, there's a difference in the population that we're dealing with because Australia has like more kangaroos than people, but still, we still manage to use our resources properly. So some of the techniques that that could be used have already been introduced by Ms. Susan. Like she talked about rainwater use and things like this, which are very much being used now in Australia. So for example, we're going to build a new house. We are actually required to put in a rainwater tank, not for drinking purposes, but for flushing our toilet, because we know that it's very expensive, to use treated water to flush our toilet. So there are lots of things that we could do. But I guess in terms of giving a general comment, because I'm a modeler, I'm a hydrological modeler, I would like to just say that, it's very hard to talk about management when you don't know like the numbers that you're dealing with. So for me, it's very important, say nationally, and even say nationally first, and then we go locally to do a proper, say, integrated water balance assessment first. That's not just including rainwater, but also including anthropogenic impacts or anthropogenic extraction, say, building dams, and then also looking at our groundwater resources. So these kinds of studies have been done globally already, but I haven't seen, so feel free to educate me. I haven't seen much that has been done, say, nationally, looking at all this, like, how much water do we have in say surface water, groundwater, and all of this, and how do we what's the projected demand, and how do we make ends meet? So things like this, so that we could have a look at, what else could we tap? So things like this. So maybe Ms. Susan could tell me more, or let others could tell me more about all these initiatives. But yeah, so for us to be able to manage all this stuff, we need to understand what the numbers are and where to get these numbers, I guess. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Yeah, very important to have data. So that's the idea. So monitoring, we have to do it consistently. Okay, not only because we need to design our infrastructure, but I agree with you, Dr. Cherry, that we need really data, in situ data for our not only groundwater, but we mentioned about the hydrological, component from the rainfall, surface water, groundwater, both quantity and quality, which was also stressed by Engineer Abanyo earlier on. So thank you for your comments. So now let's call to join us. So let's call our this speakers. Okay, let's call and let's share the screen together. And then actually we curated some questions, possible questions. Merong mga questions from private questions from our attendees. Yan, so let's wait. Yan, so let's call each. Yan. I think it's really nice. We can take a photo first if everybody's on the screen now. Ayan. Yan, so let's call. And then also I would like to invite our PAASE president. So he's with us today. Mario, President Mario Santo Domingo. I hope you can join us on our discussion if you are available now. So
I'm here.
Yeah, here. Okay, so I would like to invite Dr. Mario to also introduce about PAASE. And maybe we could, utilize this platform, this our organization to achieve our common goals and objectives. Okay, let us spotlight Dr. Mario. What do you use? Okay, this one. Okay. Naka-spotlight na ba everyone? Ayan. Okay. So everybody's on the screen na. So I think may kulang pa tayo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Dr. Mario. I don't know. Ako lang ba hindi nakakakita? Naka-spotlight na ba all? Okay.
That's fine.
Ayan. Okay. So let's use the gallery view so we can see. Ayan. So everybody. Okay. Sige. So Dr. Mario first. Okay. Please say
Of
something.
course. Thank you very much, Dr. Marla Diaz, for organizing this wonderful session. So this is the second of the 2 sessions on groundwater, and I'd like to let the audience know that PAASE, or the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering, has been sponsoring all the webinars and fireside chats every month. We have probably 3 or 4 of these sessions every month, and I would like to invite you to attend our future webinars and fireside chat. In fact, in April, which is the anniversary month of PAASE, we will have a fireside chat on science, technology, innovations in the region, focus on Mindanao. That will be on April 8th, organized by Dr. Alvin Culaba of De La Salle and Dr. Ann Villalobos of the Central Mindanao University. On April 21st, we will have a webinar on rice genomes titled What's New in Rice Science, with our guests, Dr. Michael Puruganan of NYU, Dr. Glenn Gory of Sharka, and Dr. Kasiana Veracruz of the International Rice Research Institute. And finally, on April 22nd, we have a fireside chat on the presidential campaign and surveys to be presented by Dr. Aris Arugay of the UP Diliman Department of Political Science. So we have a lot in store for you. Please watch out for our announcements for the Zoom link at paase.org. Thank you very much, Dr. Marla. Back to you.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dr. Mario. So now I would like to call Hiel. So Hiel has some questions to our speakers.
Right. Thank you, Doc Marla. So there are interesting questions from our participants after we hear multi-sectoral perspectives on groundwater management. So I think we'll start with Engineer Villacorta. Hi, Engineer Villacorta. So the question is, how aggressive is the monitoring system in Metro Manila? Does it cover both porous and fractured aquifers in the region?
Yes, hello, sir. Thank you for the question. But as part of MWSS, we are not so attentive with the monitoring. The monitoring is with us just for the report and the evaluation of it all is all for NWRB. We do not have the capacity to evaluate because as part of MWSS is more on surface water. We just conducted this deep wells as part and will be studied as augmentation only. But right after our water source already completed, that is the Kaliwa Dam, we will use this deep wells only as a standby source for emergency, especially during man-made or natural calamities, and as if ever or hanggat water level lowered, and then and it cannot no longer supply and meet the what do you call this? We cannot no longer meet the demand of our two concessionaires. There are just an augmentation for the supply, and all the monitoring and the approval of its use is all for NWRB. We are just recommending the use, and the approval of its use is all about NWRB. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Engineer Villacorta. So next is for Engineer Christine. So the question for you, Engineer Christine, is that considering the increasing demand and the depleting water supply, what are the possible options to address this water demand and supply issue aside from surface water and groundwater? And there's a connected question also. Do we have any managed aquifer or artificial recharge techniques already being implemented in the country to promote infiltration and thus recharge and reduce floods at the same time?
Hi, good morning. Thank you very much for that question. With regards to the management of that demand and supply for the projection of the East Zone, as I've mentioned earlier, a non-revenue water or the water losses, the management of the water losses is one of a key factor in managing the demand and supply, because since we have a very limited supply at this stage, and the big surface water sources will come in 5 years after, the management of the water losses is very key. So that's one that I think Manila Water has provided a very good example of that experience, because as I've mentioned, with just managing and reducing our NRW, we were able to save 700 million liters per day of water. So that would mean another source. That could have been another source that should have been developed, another big source as big as Kaliwa Dam of MWSS. And once you reduce that, the maintenance and management of that to be at that low level is also very key, because in our experience during the pandemic, it's very hard to maintain the NRW once you have constraints in the area. Like during the pandemic, we had constraints in going in the field at the onset, and it increases faster. It increased faster than what we expected. So you really have to monitor that very closely. Though I would say that the water network of Manila Water and the assets are already in its tight condition. As I think Yang earlier mentioned, that it's the community factor that should also be monitored, because most of our water losses during that time came from the commercial losses, or like because it's very challenging in terms of our economy. We experience a lot of illegal connections, tampering of meters. You can't blame people, because they would really be desperate to do some measures just to get that water because they cannot afford it. So that's one. So the NRW management and maintaining the close coordination with the community is very, very key. Aside from the large infrastructures in terms of the surface water sources and the management of alluvial sources. So that's one. And I think Miss our colleague from NWRB mentioned the demand management campaign in our customers. It's very new to the Philippines. I would say I agree to that. We've already started the campaign or the information campaign with our customers together with NWRB, MMDA, and the LGUs to really communicate to our customers and to our people to really consume their water wisely. Just the essentials, specifically during this pandemic season, since we have very limited supply of water and during drought. So I would say NRW management and demand management through campaign and information to our customers are the two key factors that we can add to the long-term surface water sources that we have in our.
Sige, ante, okay.
All right. So thank you, Engineer Christine, for expounding your answer to that particular question. So the next question is being addressed to Engineer Sherwin. Engineer Sherwin, so during your presentation, you've mentioned earlier some of the initiatives of the LGU on solid waste management, but could you cite more examples on the initiatives on information dissemination and efforts on improving sewage, septic tank design, and construction, especially for new buildings in the LGU?
Yes, thank you for the question. Initially for 2022, we started checking for the certificate of dislodging and treatment of all establishments, whether private, public institutions, on the renewal of business permit. So all of the renewing businesses will
Alright, I think medyo mahina yata yung audio ni Sherwin.
or and certificate. That is our continuing with. If they comply with the septic tank and septic tank. Yes, I'm on mobile kasi I'm.
Alright.
Hello.
Sure. Thank you, Engineer Sherwin. I think from what I have captured dun sa explanation ni Engineer Sherwin, basically more on the implementation of policies with regard to septic management and ensuring that new buildings owners are compliant with regard to these policies. So later on, maybe Engineer Sherwin could just type in the chat box some more explanation on this. But ingat po, Sir Sherwin. So there's a question here, by the way, to Dr. Aga. Hi, Dr. Aga. So the question is, in relation to your presentation a while ago, how much of these contaminants make their way to the groundwater? Any idea on how much of these, any plans on expanding research to this area, like monitoring these contaminants regularly would be very expensive? Any suggestion on which ones to be prioritized here in the Philippines?
Okay, thanks, Bear. There's a lot of questions there. So yes, they make it to the groundwater. We have detected them in really deep wells, especially in farms where they put a lot of manure, because a lot of these are very highly water soluble. So they just seep through groundwater. And once they are in groundwater, they don't degrade. What was the question? What to prioritize? Okay, it's hard to say because in the Philippines, there's so many of them, so it's hard to prioritize. For me, actually, I didn't get to that, but it's the perfluoroalkyl substances, which are called forever chemicals. These are industrial chemicals used for firefighting. So it's not so much the antibiotics, actually. But there are many halogenated compounds that are carcinogenic that should be prioritized. But it's expensive to monitor. So yeah.
All right. Thank you po, Dr. Aga. The next question is for Mr. Yang Villa. Hi, Mr. Yang. So you had a very interesting presentation earlier about multi-stakeholder engagement and public-private partnerships. The question is, how do you foresee the trend of PPP in terms of water resources management here in the Philippines?
Thanks for that question. I think it will only become more popular. It already is very popular over the last, say, 5 years, 5 to 7 years. There's been over 50 PPP projects in the water sector. Of different kinds, many of them water source development, meaning bulk water supply, so developing rivers, lakes, surface water as an alternative or a complement to groundwater, but also lots of what we call full concession, like similar to Manila Water, that a private entity, could be a joint venture or a new private investor, takes over the operations from end to end of a water utility. The reason I say I think it will become more popular is precisely as Engineer Abanyo said, because of the need for financing. Unfortunately, many of our water districts and local government units are so cash trapped and are not liquid or creditworthy enough to finance their water supply development projects, especially when we're talking about large-scale developments for, say, surface water. The second reason is because many water resource projects just make more sense to be done on a large-scale basis rather than a piecemeal basis. And a good example is development of a large dam. It makes more sense to have one large dam for multiple water operators than just one water operator attempting to build that dam for themselves. So in terms of economies of scale, it makes more sense to bring them together. And at such large project scales, private investment is typically, not always, but typically a better candidate for funding than government financing. The other reason for why we need to have more PPPs is just the scale of the water supply problem. In 2015, we only had about 85% of the country coverage in terms of level 3 and level 2 water supply, which means that about 15 million Filipinos are still do not have access to safely managed and adequately managed water supply. The problem is even bigger for wastewater. And to accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goal, which is universal access for water and sanitation by 2030, we need all the help that we can get. And that requires both public sector and the private sector to be working together.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Yang, for that answer to that question. So before we proceed on to the next question, I'd like first to reiterate the response of Engineer Sherwin to the previous question. He mentioned that they are requiring all establishments to provide certificate of dislodging and treatment of collected septage prior to renewal of business permit, massive inspection and monitoring of all establishments, and operation of their septage management facility on mid-April of this year, 2022. Now, there's an interesting question to one of our reactors. If okay lang po, Doc Marla. There's a question here addressed to Engineer Abano. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on the fragmented institutions on water? Should the NWRB overlook more aspects of water other than permitting?
for the fragmented around 30 more than 30 water related agencies. In 1998, that was already the issue raised by our consultants. So until now, so there's a move from NEDA. We have this Department of Water, wherein they're looking into the consolidation and streamlining of all the water-related agencies, and coming up with regulatory agency such as the resource regulation and the economic regulation. Because we have two regulation at NWRB. For the resource, we issue water permit, and then for the economic regulation, wherein we issue certificate of public convenience or a franchise to water service providers, private water service providers, for them to sell water. So, and of course, there are policies and water resources assessment done by NWRB. So Department of Water is a long-awaited move from the government. It's just that they're not prioritizing water, okay? You know, if you will tell the agencies the budget of NWRB where it covers nationwide is just a mere budget of another agency, a very big agency. So Department of Water is very much welcome move from the government.
All right. Thank you, Engineer Susan, for that articulation. So I think that's the last question on my end. So I think it's already 9:55, and before we, I think, end this discussion, I'd like first to synthesize all the what has transpired from the presentations and from the reactions. Basically, more studies on groundwater are needed, from visualization, assessment, treatment, even socio-economic studies, and anthropogenic studies. Water quantity and water quality should go hand in hand. Water demand management should also be prioritized. And there's a need to review existing policies on groundwater, enforce it, and even update these policies. And definitely, it is high time to resort and explore more public-private partnerships. So that's on my end. Back to you, Doc Marla.
Yes, Hill. So I think before we really end this Fireside chat, we have to ask them our question last time about the invisible. So since we are, Hill, you forgot to ask the question. So we have to give them 30 seconds to answer that question, because since the theme of this World Water Day, and we are celebrating actually this Fireside chat because of the World Water Day, which is happening on March 22. So Hill, please ask our question regarding the World Water Day theme.
All right. So the big question now is, why do we need to make groundwater visible? Or why should we prioritize groundwater? Because the theme is making groundwater visible, making the invisible visible.
Yeah, because we see, it's based on the previous discussions, really groundwater, parang it's not the priority, or we can see kasi, diba? So it's underground. So how can we make it more visible? So that's the question. So let's ask individually. So let's begin with Engineer Villacorta. Everybody, we're gonna ask this question. Very quick lang 30 seconds. Okay, Engineer Villacorta, how can we make the invisible visible?
Yes, thank you for that, ma'am. Groundwater is less recognized because it is unseen. So making it visible, it would create awareness to everyone that everything we do above the ground reaches underground. That is why we had to provide the information on how those contaminants, those pollutants reaches the groundwater. Thank you.
Very good. Excellent. Okay, next. Now, let's move on to Dr. Diana Aga. How can we make the invisible visible?
How can we make it visible? Awareness, basically educating people that it's all related. It's one water. right? Rainwater is connected to surface water, is connected to groundwater. So we have to pay attention to groundwater. That's all.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Yes, everything is connected. All of us are connected. That's why also we're here together today. Okay, now let's call if Sherwin, Engineer Sherwin is here. Are you here? Can you?
Yes, I'm still. Sorry for not good background over. So uh, there's problem with groundwater.
Would you like to answer the question? How can we make it visible?
Yeah, so we can make it visible because now in Cavite we have very big problem with regards to groundwater. So as part of the LGU, we need to monitor all the establishments and make sure that the groundwater will not be polluted. So that's why we are looking at a massive inspection and monitoring of our establishment so that the remaining groundwater will be not be polluted. Thank you.
Now let's hear from Engineer Bay. How about you? How can we make the invisible visible?
Yeah, by educating our people, being aware of its importance and its impact to our everyday lives.
That's nice. Brief and powerful words. Thank you. And then next, let's call it Young. How about you, Young?
I think we need to start him young. We're talking to an echo chamber here. These are water professionals talking to other water professionals, and we already know the importance of water. But if we start educating them from a very young age, the importance of water, why groundwater is the invisible network that connects all of us throughout the world, then I think people will grow up to have a better appreciation of groundwater.
Wow, that's nice. Very relatable to your name, diba? Young. Yes. So we begin with educating. You know, we have to share this one to our high school teachers as well. So this video, this our meeting today. Okay, next for our reactor, Sir Dr. Pagya. Visible, in 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, this is that is very visible in the in very big visible to the sense that we have a lot of innovations, opportunities, and perhaps technologies that we can undertake comprehensive initiatives in this regard.
Yeah, we have bright minds. Filipinos have bright minds, so we have to explore more opportunities in the future, near future. Okay. Okay. Next, Engineer Abanyo, how about you? How can we make the invisible visible?
Right now, we're having importance of groundwater to the students and teachers nationwide. So simultaneous to this fire chat. So the importance of groundwater, we're telling the students the importance of groundwater, how to protect the groundwater, and some with water conservation for groundwater. But for the R&D, for technically, how to make the visible invisible. We put up groundwater monitoring wells just to measure the water level and the water quality, because we cannot see the quality and the quality and the water level in the aquifer. So that's it. Thank you.
Wow, that's excellent. Maybe you can also share with us with PAASE your initiatives in NWRB, so we can also help you spread, your campaigns and also support your activities. Engineer Susan. Okay, thank you so much. Next, how about Engineer Donnie Ray? How about you? How can we make the invisible visible?
Thank you for that. So how do we make the invisible visible? We make what we can do is
oh no, break. Naghang.
Yeah, naghang to.
Okay. Sakto. All right. Sige, let's yeah. Call na lang si Dr. Cherry muna. Oh no.
Okay.
Okay, Dr.
Good.
Cherry, you I know you can answer the question. How can we make the invisible visible?
Yeah, I think let's make it more relatable to people. Let's say that it's like gas. Let's say that it's like gas. That it's a limited resource and it will eventually run out. And if we don't manage it properly, it will just it will become depleted and we will run out of it, and eventually we cannot afford it. So I think it's very relatable at the moment because of the high gas prices.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a saying like the water is finite, but our demands for it are not. And the people who are using it are also, infinitely increasing throughout the years. So we have to make more, sustainable solutions in way how we can utilize, exploit, manage our resources, especially water resources. Okay, Donnie Resorty, Engineer Donnie, nakat ka kanina. So let's call you again. Sige. So answer the question again. How can we make the invisible visible?
Okay, making making groundwater the invisible visible is only attainable or achievable by educating our people on the value of water, of groundwater for that matter. Let's start them like teaching them the connections that water brings to us. That we are really, really connected by water. Like all of us are using water as it is a very important aspect of our life. So we should educate and then teach them how to sustainably manage and use water and give importance and value to.
Okay, yes, we learned from our speakers, from our discussants and reactors, the value, the importance of water, and we know the importance of education. As one of us, from the IAA, the 5 building blocks that include, vision. Okay, we have the same vision, governance, important, the policies, knowledge and capacity, capacitating people. We need to, encourage more to study about, water and learn about water. And then planning tools. And the last one is the implementation and funding. So those are the 5 building blocks which we could, utilize in order to, be successful in all of our endeavors in making the invisible visible. Okay, so that's all I think for today. So let's have our photo session. Photo op, please. Siguro we can request everyone in the room. We have 81 participants. Thank you for joining. Ang dami nating participants today. Okay, 81 participants. Please join us. Okay, and then we're gonna post this one in Facebook. Also, we have to spread awareness, diba? So if you are following our Facebook page, the Filipino Scientist, so please follow our Facebook page and share this video to your friends so we can start educating others and spread this important discussion on groundwater and also in water in general. Okay, so are we ready? So let's take a photo. Ayan. So hello, most of our attendees are from the young young youth, diba? That's nice. Excellent. Okay, siguro siya yung iba no? Ayaw mag-on ng camera. Pero we can see your profile photos naman. So I think that would be okay. Sige, let's take a photo. I'm gonna count. 1, 2, 3, and then please smile. Okay, two screens we have. First muna. Okay, ready? 1, smile muna tayo lahat. Okay, 1. Shy sila, yun lang sumali. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, next screen. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, and then, yeah, I think, yeah, one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so yung may we ask, siguro let's spotlight all of the discussants muna. Okay, may I request and Hill and me and discussants and siguro si Dr. Mario, discussants first and then later on yung reactor para kasya sa screen. Okay, our discussants first, please help in spotlighting. Thank you. Our volunteer students, Jay, and also Sergi. Ayan, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then see Dr. Mario siguro. Yeah, okay. So let's smile, everyone. Ayan. Okay, Sherwin, siguro si Ian. Okay, complete na. Ayan, okay. So for discussant, screen muna tayo. Okay, smile everyone. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you. And then our reactors naman. Okay, reactors with PAASE President and Hill. Ayan. Reactors. Thank you very much. Ayan, so Cherry, Dr. Pagya, also Engineer Donnie and Engineer Susan Abanyo. So we wait for Engineer Susan. Okay, yan. Complete na tayo. Ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. Oh, wait lang. Mayroong tao sa waiting room. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3, smile. Ayun. Thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, it was indeed a productive day today. Happy World Water Day and have a waterful day today. Thank you.
Thank you, Marla. Thank you, Hill.
Thank you, to all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Marla.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, Mario.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Doc Mario.
Thank you. Thank you. See you again.
Actually, I was there yesterday during your meeting with